Good morning. It's Radiate Life with Lorelei, our beautiful healing mandala that we have, that energize is sending out to you. And this morning, I'm just coming on real quick. I have a short demo to do. I'm not sure if in your community or on your path, if you've come across this term. There's many terms for what it is, but the term that I'm using today is called timeline clearing. And we used to talk about maybe decade clearing or childhood clearing, and all that is good, whatever resonates with you. But in 2019, I did a very deep timeline clearing, and we all know what a timeline is, right? You do a historic timeline since the beginning of time and all the significant major events, right? So timeline clearing is exactly that, where you go into your own experience, being human in this place, in this time, whatever your belief system supports, okay? And so we start with our current experiences in this current, I call it a hologram. Our life is our virtual reality. Here in the physical plane is how I look at it. So we did this timeline clearing, and I was introduced to it by one of my teachers and mentors. And so we really started digging in and pulling stuff out and doing it in a way where we would like face or connect with what was going on. And most of the time, if it was possible, we wouldn't let ourselves be overwhelmed by it, but we'd be able to touch it. We'd be able to see if there is anything else that we were needing to glean from it, to receive from it. You might say learn, and I have kind of a little story about that, but if that resonates with you, stick with that. What I just like to say is, do I need to taste that experience again? Do I need to smell it again? Is there some component in that experience that my inner being wanted to have that is still left on the table? And so the idea is that you go through this, and what's left, I always say, is what's left is love. What's left is the fragrance of a life well lived. What's left is maybe the beautiful smell of a forest, walking through the trees full of mist on a beautiful sunrise, misty, dewy morning, right? Where you know that it happened. You can see it from this perspective of your soul's perspective. You're not looking through your brain and your memory, which is only giving you a small component of what that was. When we look at the timeline, we actually are going in well and clearing ourselves. We'll actually go into the experience of it. And so another way of saying it is you're going into the energetic experience of it, the Akasha, Chitta, and Prana. You may call it the vibration of the universe. You may call it the universal library. You may call it different aspects of the Akasha and what's called the Akashic records, or the book of life. Has been written. So I had woken up early one morning, and of course there's a lot of prayer and invocation. There's a lot of lifting and clearing and supporting ourselves and our loved ones, and sending the support to people all over the world, people we will never see and know, but people that we love, because we are here sharing this experience, this hug around the world. I want to tell you this because this is really potent. At the time, it was like, yeah, this feels really good. I want to move forward in my life. I have 3 teenagers. I need to move forward in my life, because I know in my relationship and in my family life, my relationship with myself dictates the relationship I have with my teenagers. And I have also found that the relationship too that I have with my teenagers is a lot like the relationship I experienced in my teenage years. May or may not be the similar kind of relationship that I had with my mom, or those kinds of different dynamics, but all of that comes up. Things come up, and you've got 3 teenagers going through the same time, and they're moving through their timeline. They're not slowing down and rewinding. They're not putting it on pause. They're not taking the remote control and doing reverse and watching it again and again and again. It's like they're living life. I know as adults we feel like we're confined in a lot of ways, but they're not. They know they're not, they have all different ways. And so with all that said, that's the kind of energy that goes on in my house. So that when I go to bed at night, or when I go to meditate, like my meditation is like the vacation that I didn't tell anybody about. And sending out energy for as long as is needed for that day. Sometimes it's an hour at a time, sometimes it's 16 minutes at a time. And what happened was, I'd been doing all this clearing, and my kids, all the different things are going on in their life, and my husband, who's a teacher, and managing the adults and managing the kids and the parents, and like working in all of this, like, where's my center? Where's my tree trunk? Where's my grounding? And I'd remember all the clearing that I did, and I was so grateful because, with my partner and I, something had really come up in our energy field, and it was impacting both of us. And usually the biggest things that impact both of us have to do with parenting, right? So, and these are the things on the fly, and how does one person view a situation, and expectation. There's these different components, separating all the different components, my reaction, his response, my response. So it all kind of came to a head, and it was something that needed to be acted upon, because it was something that our kiddo had been resisting, and we were like giving them that opportunity to step in and kind of putting little directional indicators in there, and then even we were kind of at a point of saying what comes next. So what had happened is, I was able to recognize again, right, that what I see in my world, in my hologram, is for me to respond to, and my partner sees in their world, and their hologram is for them to respond to. And I could see what happens very often, and again, I see this most clearly with parenting, because the fact that it has to be done now, it involves a third party, and it always involves your partner and their childhood experiences, or teaching, and me and my childhood experiences. And I'm a teacher too, and I'm a facilitator. I am facilitator of group dynamics. So we have all these, and he is a facilitator of group dynamics in the educational system. So it's all like this. And I was on this moment of being in my world and feeling like I was going to step into what was going on with him and have a resolution. We kind of had a tipping point where we kind of reached the edges of our own hologram, and we're like, hey, over there, what's going on? What's it look like over there? And what do you need? No, not what does the child need. What do you need in this moment in time? It looks to me like you got this, but you just need some space. I got what I'm doing over here. You got what you're doing over there. And it was really this moment in time. In one place was like, you need to fully get involved in what your perspective is outside of your partner. And I could sense that what the next step could have been is like, we were going to try to convince the other of one's own perspective, which you will never see, but you do work together to collaborate. You are coming together, especially when it comes for your, your kiddo, or, especially, in our house at this time, and really important steps that are being taken. And so it was this really important time, like, I know you got this, and I also know that whatever you have, I know you need to deal with that. And I know that over here, I need to deal with this. I need to deal with myself in this way that moves me forward. And so I really, really was like, this is really unusual, because I know there would be other times in which I felt that in order for me to move forward, and in order for this experience, right, this experience that our teenager was wanting to have, and the school system, and that we're wanting to have, and they're right on the verge of graduating from high school, and this is a crazy time, and things could be held up because of all the craziness. And I was like, it's interesting, because I hadn't really felt this before, but I felt that I was limited by my ability to engage in this by my partner. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting, because then when you start going down that rabbit hole, it feels like you start waiting around for other people to look at things your way, or to resolve it in your way. And it could be a pattern that you carry forward from your past. It could be from your ancestors. It's more predominant in my culture, in the women, more so than the men, or the masculine or the feminine. But again, we are both masculine and feminine, so it could be either, right? It just depends upon have you created a relationship or a role that is heavily traditional or non-traditional, and what aspect is each person. There's another level to going down the level. What level are we working on with that, right? And so even within myself, there's that masculine divine and feminine divine that are kind of they're kind of struggling here. And I very consciously saw, now in my perspective, this happens in my life, not just in my relationship, but I'm just going to move this over to a little bit bigger scenario here, which is, or experience that happens with my relationship with the world, and especially if the relationship in that world, in those situations and circumstances and educational system is what we've come to call now the 3D, a 3D experience. And not to look down on it, it's just to recognize that it's at a level, and it has its own kind of container and its own kind of limits. And moving from to 4D and 5D, 6D, 8D, 9D, 12D, and on, right? And because it's not just 5D, it's beyond that. But this is becoming more and more in our consciousness. People are beginning to understand it more and more. I think we experienced it. Many people experienced it. I know I did, but we didn't call it this concretely because we were moving through it, and didn't really have, in my group anyway, we didn't really have a need to keep labeling it, but we would level up and we would upgrade and move and that kind of thing. But it has become a common vernacular to look at 3D, 4D, 5D. We usually hear 3D, 5D, but there is moving into 4D as well, moving into this greater expansion of self, and leaving the density behind and bringing the light forward, and learning to live on that higher frequency lightness. And we want to say it's quicker. But actually what happens is we stop trying to hold on to things, and we live more naturally as energy truly is manifesting and moving. It's an amazing lesson to learn. You really have to get outside the gravity of everything going on. And this the hug felt around the world time period of emergence. Is it emergency or emergence? I choose emergence. Then we're becoming more and more familiar, right? And we have those places where we go where we relate on a 5D, 4D, 5D, 6D. However, when I am going to the grocery store and working with a bank or an educational system, that's very clearly 3D. That is there are people individually inside that I do find that we connect with, but a lot of that is very, very solid. So what happened was I realized in this experience during parenting that I could either approach this from a 3D level, or I could approach this from a 5D level. And from the 5D level, it looked like that I'd done what I needed to do. I'd actually kind of stepped in and said, is there more we need to do? And how are you doing? And are you taking care of yourself? And you need to fully figure out what that is, and then come seek me. I'll be available. And I'm like, I'm over here doing this in the way that I need to do this, and really, really gain from this experience and go deeper into what is left in the complete package of this experience for me. And what had happened is, because I saw this connection between this work I had done last year in clearing the energy and meditations that I'd been doing, that I had been doing a great deal of clearing and releasing. A lot of it looks like choices. A lot of it is like emotions. A lot of it is like loving people, but saying, you know, I'm moving forward, and in my forward life, who's playing with me on my playground, who's has the same kind of intention and interest that I do, who's looking at the individual and taking care of themselves, but also looking at humanity and knowing that the rise of humanity, the humanity of humanity is all of us thriving, right? Like, who else is out there looking at that? Yes, we have these intense times, and yes, I'm parenting 3 teenagers, and yes, me and my partner are, you know, evolving and changing within all of this, and that feels very scary. It feels at any moment in time it could all come crumbling down. It feels like that Jenga puzzle. It feels like that he or I might pull a piece out that would like crash our whole relationship and everything we'd built, because these things are so important and so necessary. And the more we pull those pieces out, and it might wobble but it doesn't fall, or it falls and then we laugh, we're like, oh my gosh, okay, let's put this together. But we're not going to put the pieces in the same way that we did, right? So here's what happened, is I had woken up in the morning, I'd had a really big release, and I felt like, whew, it's done. Like whatever I needed to do with my child, whatever I needed to kind of, engage with them, engage with my partner, engage in the situation, engage the patterns and everything together, and energetically clear that playing field, put the pieces that were there. And I was like, you know what? Now it's time for me to be grateful and to go to my next step and what I'm needing to do. And life will happen the way it needs to happen. And if I need to get back involved in it some way, I will. But I am not adding any worry. I'm not adding any concern. Anything I do from this point is going to, because I don't believe that it's going to come true. It might be within me. It might be within my kiddo. It might be within my partner. It might be within the family dynamic. It could be within me or outside of me. But at that point, I felt very clear in here, felt the green light to move ahead. In that morning, what happened is I was shown that I did this global meditation, and I was shown this box. And when you take out the extra triggering energy out of an experience, so this is a plastic collapsible crate, right? And it's a container, and it's such a great metaphor, because if you have a container like this, and let's say you have an experience that you keep replaying over and over and over again, a choice that was made by you or a decision that was made by another that impacted you, and every time you go back and revisit that, you put more stuff in there. Oh, remember that time this person did that? Yeah, stick more stuff in it. Remember that time that I got so mad and then I did nothing? Yeah, stick that stuff in it. Remember that time that thing happened and I felt really bad and helpless and nobody was there for me and no one cares for me and nobody helps? You put more stuff in it. And then you have this really nice container, and you might have had an original experience that had a little bit in it, but now it's like overflowing, and every time you think about that, it keeps you stuck. Every time you think about it, you've got energy here. So a timeline clearing is it takes all this stuff out, and you can either dump all the stuff out, you could have a fire, you could take a piece of it out at a time, but when that is cleared, what happens is that timeline, it's exactly what happens. There it goes. That's your original experience without any triggers or anything else left. And so what happens is it's in your timeline. You look at your timeline and it's done. And it's it almost looks like a domino, which was, I was like, oh, that's funny. It could be a domino too. It could be on edge. It could be any way in how your consciousness or your mind works. But that's what happened to me. I really like that feeling. Like I remember when I got this box, I'm like, I love this box. It's useful. And so when you take everything out of it, what happens is there's no longer a container to put that stuff in. It's nothing there. It is done. It is so done. And that is the greatest feeling in the world. And sometimes you have to take it out one stuffed animal at a time. Sometimes you have lots of scraps of paper in there and you take it and you have a fire. So you know it's there. You recognize it's there. You can go ahead and there's a number of different ways. Some do need to have the feeling and ask and see, do I need to do this step by step, or have I worked through this and anything that my soul, my inner being wanted to experience? It is done. It is done. It is so done. And I'll say two things come to mind right now, and that is, one is timeline clearing. Another way is life review. A timeline clearing and life review are related, although they're not the same thing. But a timeline clearing, what came to me is that one of the things that I actively do, I have over 22 spiritual friends in spirit, like 22, over 22. Like close people, part of my community, part of my family, that are on the other side, and none of them, I'm going to say none of them were over 61. None of them. And but anyway, I wanted to say that. So I have a lot of, I've had lots and lots of opportunities to, you know, to hang around and be there and be present in different capacities for people that are transitioning and what happens after they transition. And I feel like that part of me opened up merely because of the volume of people and because of the openness I have and the connection, the desire for them to help us here, and the desire for me to connect with them. So what would happen is, one, what I noticed is that as my friends were going through a life review, I started going through a life review too. And at first it was unconscious. But here's a funny movie. Albert Brooks did a movie called Defending Your Life, and I saw that movie. I think I was in my early 20s or something, and it just cracked me up, because you know what? I think there's a lot of truth in that. There's so much truth in that. So that's a good one to watch, Defending Your Life. And so it does really depict what a life review is about, but it's about looking at that from a full perspective point of view. And I would like journey not only with them but with other parts of my life, and waiting until I had a near-death experience or a trauma, or that I was on my deathbed. I was going through that, and I was clearing it, making peace with it, and I was moving forward here on earth. It was very empowering. And then my friends would come back, and sometimes they'd talk through other people, sometimes it would come through me. Very often it was from my dreams. And we would have dream time together, and I'd have a contact with them, and they would tell me what they were learning and what they saw, and how they, most of the time, many of them saw, especially the early days, many of them saw things differently than me, and they came to realize a lot of what I was saying, and just their change in perspective was very helpful. And they usually came back to say they were really grateful, and that there were so many different and empowering messages that they came to affirm. And the last thing is this timeline also. So during this last time, my husband and I, it's something that's come to me, and I call it a marriage review. And he and I have been very honest with each other. It has been very challenging and rewarding, really building and raising our family. And you know, we have a family of empaths, and none of us are really prepared to really, for all that meant, and our kids being very young and having all kinds of things going on. Some of it we could do, well, we always did holistically, and then when we needed to have that support medically, we would work hand in hand with other medical professionals who would be willing to work with us, because I really believe in that relationship and using the best of both worlds to create something, especially when it comes to the children, especially when you have other people around you feel like the medical system, they don't have a lot of alternative or supportive and self-care things they just never experienced. So there was some of that, so they could feel also calm and supported in the same way we would find other like-minded. But it was this marriage review real recently that we were able to just like say, you know, we celebrated 20 years of marriage on May 20th, 2020. It was the 20th week of the year, and we were all in a cocoon. And that's completely not what we expected. We did expect to have, I did anyway, a beautiful 20th anniversary party. And but about a year before it happened, I started deciding that I didn't think that I was going to plan that. I tried to plan it and it didn't work out. And I felt like, no, it's not in my heart to do that. It's really not in my heart to do that. And I'm not feeling really supported to do that. So we did some other things that we did, and were really personal, and we could do regardless of what was going on in the world, right? In our own inner world, we were creating that for ourselves. So that was a marriage review. So there's the timeline, which goes back, and rather than going to your brain, you actually go back into the energy of that experience, and that's all you need. Now, if you want to talk about going into the Akashic Records, or you want to go to the actual vibration, if that's helpful. If it's not helpful, then don't even look at it like that. You could actually visit those times in dream time. You could go into what's called a portal. You could call it a window. You could call it, you know, anything you want, or nothing at all, right? You connect with that energy and just allow to see what happens. Then there's the life review. And I always, was raised during a time when a lot of people were talking about near-death experiences and meeting, going to the light and all these different experiences. And I used to always say, I don't want to have that trauma in order to have that kind of experience. And I would say that is so true about my life, is that although I have had times where I was injured or there was something that came from me being injured and going through physical therapy, that I never had that kind of huge experience. But I have been taken into experiences of my loved ones when they passed, and they were reviewing their timeline. And I remember saying, a good friend of mine, Ivy, I won't go into the whole story, but Ivy and I were connected because we had our mutual best friend. My best friend all through high school, but her best friend all through grade school and junior high. And when our friend had cancer for the 7th time, her and I began communicating and getting together and supporting each other as our third friend, our other friend that brought us together. And we shared a great love, and Ivy and I shared great intensity, and our friend who was passing on was not a mother, and Ivy and I were moms, and we connected really, really closely. And I know very, very quickly, because of the love that we had for our friend, we had that love for each other by extension, and we really verbalized that love, we shared that love, we supported each other. And ultimately I received a message that my friend Ivy was going to pass away, and I just couldn't believe it. It was a situation where she had a medical condition, and she was aware of the medical condition, and it was something that she had been planning for, but it was also something that could just take her out at any time. And that is exactly what happened. She ended up passing away in her sleep, and it was shocking because, while we had prepared for our third friend to be transitioning, Ivy and I always thought I would have Ivy there to, back each other up and share each other and continue that journey forward. And, I in my grief and in my laughter, I said to my friend Ivy in spirit, and I said to my friend Annette while she was on earth, I said, well, apparently we know who is the better best friend, and it's not me. I said, she went before you to prepare a place for you, right? And we're not all of the same religion or the same religious views at all, really. And Ivy being Jewish, and Annette being Catholic. And that the thing was that, it was true, and there was a weird kind of acceptance at the time, although it was hard for me as a mom to imagine going when she had children very similar to my children in age and everything. And what I did is when she had passed, and I was like, okay, like my friend Annette had shared some things with me and said, yeah, she'd accepted that. She had something within her body that could take her out any time. And when you have that, she was saying, when you have that kind of a life going on, you're aware of it. You don't want that to happen, but then you also know that that could happen. And I think you turn your light up a little bit more. You live your light a little more lit. You have a little bit more energy, than the people going around you, because you really know that life is precious. That you really know. Let go of the small stuff when you can, and focus the important things. Right? Don't let a day go by that you don't kind of come back and have that life review, so you can reset the pins and go back at it tomorrow in an uplifted way, in a joyful way, in a way that says you will not look back on your life and say, gosh, I wish I would have done something else, or I would have spent less time, what do they always say, doing dishes, doing laundry, cleaning the house. Those are things you will not look back on and not have regrets about. So how to live life without regrets is another way of saying that. So back here with Ivy, and I'll wrap this up by saying, so what happened is I was like, I can accept all of that, and of course I'm accepting this, and I had some beautiful teachings from some spiritual teachers and some things that I had been doing for other people and their loved ones, and that I was an energy and prayers and love that I was doing for my friends and for their family. And I knew it helped because I wanted to do something, and doing something and doing that really, really helped me. It helped my heart. It helped me heal. It helped me feel better. It helped me understand grief. It helped me not be, told you can or you cannot grieve, or that grief has a time period, or any of that. So one day what happened was, I was going to sleep, and I had asked before I sleep, please show me. I want to feel what it feels like, that I want to feel what my friend felt like, that enabled her to leave her body and leave her children, because I want some of that, right? I want some of whatever that energy is, because I feel it. I know she had to have known things were going to be okay. I know she had to have something that would have done that, and I would like to know what that is. And what happened was, what comes to me now, and I haven't thought about this in a really long time. So 3 angels came to me, and they were dressed in white. And they weren't like angels in what we see in the traditional sense. They were like, if an angel is a large pillar of light and a beautiful, welcoming sunshine on the horizon, and there's 3 in different directions, like that's what the angels were. And they lifted me up, and they took me someplace. And again, this is like when I'm going to bed and I'm waking up, and they took me someplace. And where they took me was a place of just total peace. And it was a place of seeing my own life being cleansed. If it was like a white tornado with gold going through, I saw all these parts of my life happening really, really quickly, and connections and people and experiences and things I hadn't thought about in a long time, and they happened so quickly. It's like it's not even like a picture frame or a picture that you can flip a book. It happened so quickly, and I just felt it on the inside, and I knew exactly what it meant. And I just, by the end of this, which I probably didn't last very long, but it was like I was completely free and clear and at peace with everything in the world. And in that moment, I just remember, and I'm in that moment now, and I remember going, I am happy. I am happy. I am so happy. I felt free and clear. I felt life made total sense. And I went, thank you. Now I get it. Now I can have peace. And so when I came back and I remembered it and I wrote it down, and I was amazed, because I completely, my body, my energy, my heart, my emotions, my thinking had cleared up. I was alive again, right? I was free, and I was clear, and I knew what she experienced, and I was so grateful for that experience. And I said, okay, these 3 beautiful healing angels, anytime I feel like things are overwhelming, or anytime I feel like things are getting too big, I'm going to go into this memory. I'm going to go into this experience, the memory of it, but I'm going to go further. I'm going to actually go back to the actual experience of it. I'm not going to just go into a Polaroid picture. I'm going to go into that actual experience of it. And I do, and I go back into that dream, go back into that experience, and I allow the angels to hold me, and I just say, because these were my words, not theirs, you can have whatever you want, but I just, to me, was anchoring in that energy and bringing it into me again in a good way, right? This is the energy that I want to receive. I am happy. I am happy. I am so happy, and I am grateful, and I am so very grateful. So I hope anything that I said to you today is helpful. I hope it helps you to understand what a timeline is. I hope it helps you to understand what a life review is. I hope it encourages you to do a marriage review. I hope it encourages you to draw a line and step over that line and move forward, and know that anything that needs to come up and be cleared will be and can be. The most important thing you need to do, push the reset button, use your grace and grit, be accountable for yourself, and if that's how you do all day until you are able to handle other things that are going on, then that's what you need to do. If you're not breathing your own breath, if you feel like everything is impinging on you and you can't even make your own choices, then you need to do something about that, because there isn't anyone else that can do absolutely anything about that, right? Where you do it through prayer or you do it through surgery, at the end of the day, you still have to re-engage in your life. You have to move yourself forward. You get to make your choices, and we're here for really important reasons. It's important to go ahead and own that. It's important to engage in activities that are going to be full of kindness, full of acceptance, and full of love. And if you're not starting with yourself, and if you didn't think of yourself first, then you need to write down that. That is not being selfish. That is exactly what we need to be doing. We need to be around other people who are self-fulfilling. They're, not self-sabotaging. We need to be self-affirming, self-fulfilling. We need to be responsible for filling our own bucket. That's another good book too, is How Full Is Your Bucket? It starts by generating that goodwill. Start by generating helping other people. I know one of my spiritual teachers, when I was going through a tough time, she's like, you know what? To get myself going, one of my spiritual teachers said, do good for someone else. Go do an act of service. Go volunteer. Because I guarantee you that generating good and helping other people will help you understand that you have value and that there are things important for you to fill that up. And that's so true, right? We are responsible for that, and we're responsible for the energy that we bring into this world. So we're responsible for self-care, so that as we care, we give from our abundance. Not giving from fear, not giving from guilt, not giving from, anything else. And that we're responsible, as Jill Bolte says, I am responsible for the energy that I bring into this space. And the first space is my life, and the second is probably my home, and the third is probably my car, and the fourth is probably, business and school and all that, right? I am responsible for that. If I'm not responsible for that, who is responsible for that? I like to say, when my kids have their dishes and they don't quite make it, the finish line is like either wash the dishes, put them away, or it might be put them in the dishwasher. And every time they put it like on the counter or they put it on the table, I'll pick it up and I'll hand it to them, and they'll look at me and I'm like, hand it to me, and they hand it to me. I'm like, every time you don't put your dishes away, it's like you may as well just walk over to me in bed and hand me the dishes, because you're saying I am not responsible. You are now responsible, Mom. And now they're all teenagers too. I look at them and I'm like, I know I'm not responsible. I didn't do that. And it's a life lesson. It's a life lesson. If you can take these things around you and learn that lesson. So maybe you can parent yourself. Maybe you can help awaken that child within you. Maybe you didn't have that kind of a structure, and so as an adult you're missing some of these strengths that would really help you now. Okay, well, here you are. You have full permission to fill yourself up with that. So it's important to really do that and to get into the power. One thing that fear does, one of my other beautiful communities was talking about this last week, and they were saying, yes, this is a really traumatic time and no one is bringing that down, but we're saying that if you're on a spiritual path and you're in a committed community, and there are certain things that we do to help ourselves be strong and be there for other people, and they're saying, what happens when we start to get into fear is then the next thing that comes up is a loss of control, feeling like there's loss of control, loss of power, and we start feeling victimized. And first person we victimize is ourselves, by not believing in ourselves, by not allowing ourselves to, yes, heal and yes, move forward. But as my sister-in-law said, and she prayed every day when she was going through, after being in the hospital for a year from a car accident, she would pray, I have the strength to move my arms today. I have the strength to move my body out of bed today, right? And when grief was really heavy, I would say that too. I'm empowered and I have the ability to get out of bed today and show up and keep everybody alive. I mean, that was my goal. There were some days I'm like, keep the kids alive, keep them clean, keep them fed, give them sleep, be attentive. That's it. And that was it. Keeping myself alive. No one checked out today. That's it. Go back to bed and do that until you could do something else. And when you're able to do something else, to do it. Because then that's kind of the next level, is that when we are stronger, then sometimes there's benefit in not getting stronger and then getting stronger. Or if you're sick and you start doing too much, and then you might get sick again, right? So we are responsible for when we can do more to do more. We're actually only responsible for doing the most that we can in that moment. And that might be changing, but that's always worked really well for me. So I would say that I've given you a lot of kind of tips today and tidbits. And the reason why I was coming to you today to help you understand a little bit more about timelines and about clearing your timeline, taking the stuff out of the container so that you have like a domino, or you just have a mark, and it's something that you've experienced and it gives you your power. Thank you. This is Lorelei with Radiate Life with Lorelei.